Hey, lighten up, jerk!
Well, I definitely want to say like, because I've known you for a while now, and I could tell like, kind of now, kind of seeing the whole picture, and after you've gone through all this, like, I mean, I knew that there was times where you would have periods where like, I could tell you were struggling,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily, but I was like, oh, maybe it's just like, oh, it's a bad week,
Uh-huh.
because we would see each other usually about like week to week,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, oh, it was just a bad couple of weeks,
Right.
and I mean, I think everyone has had those like where I've just had like a bad week. I know I've gone through like breakups, and it took me a couple weeks to get through it, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, but he has his Christian faith, he has people that care about him, like he's gonna be okay. I mean, we prayed for you, I prayed for you, obviously, but it's like I didn't really. I don't live with you 24 hours a day, and I kind of, but I could tell like you would go through those periods where you were going through some stuff, and then like, but then you'd be back, and it's like, oh, all right, the John that we all know and love, his dry wit, it's back, and like, oh, so he's doing good, and I'm really happy that you. It sucks that you had to kind of go through rock bottom to. Well, I went, almost rock bottom to kind of like, go and get that help that you needed. But I'm glad that you went through that, and now you're kind of on that road to recovery. Because, it's good to have the real John Choi, and not have you go through those, that really hurt. You're kind of in a prison almost, like when you're going through that stuff. I mean, you weren't sleeping, you weren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you put like pressure on a bone or something, it like breaks after a certain
Right.
point. I mean, even that thing about like Christian faith, I've always had it, but just like that bone analogy, like you could be like, super Christian, but like if you like, put pressure on a bone enough, it's gonna snap.
Right.
So like this whole thing about like, Christianity being like a shield to like prevent just consequences of like unhealthy living or just stuff. It doesn't like
No, and
Right.
I would agree with that too. Where, I've been a Christian for a while now, and I would say that because I've gone through some issues with with church and through like kind of like my own life, and I would say it's like when I first became a Christian, I was kind of it was not necessarily black and white, but I was very kind of like it's like, oh, well, it's, this way, and if it's not this way, it's not good kind
Right,
of thing.
right.
And now I realize that there's a lot more, after going through all those kind of hardships, the world's a lot more gray, and where I'm able to see, like, just because things might not necessarily be going in my direction, I still trust that, it's going in God's direction, that he's kind of taken, he's in control, and and understanding like the idea of grace and all that stuff, where just you went through your issue, and just because I'm pretty sure you you leaned on your faith, but at the same time you were able to utilize I think like doctors that were able to like that understand the mind a lot better, understand like, hey, you're going through like that doctor said, it's like, yeah, you're going through a rough patch, a rough time. Like you need to, you need some, therapy and like all this stuff to kind of work through this stuff and to do things in a healthy manner.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of even Christians out there that might be going through what you went through. They're living an unhealthy lifestyle, not dealing with stress well, and they're not dealing with stuff well. And it takes sometimes someone on the outside who's a professional that deals with this stuff on a daily basis to help them.
Yeah, I
And-
mean, like the misconceptions I talked about before about like why people or why I didn't seek out mental health treatment.
Yeah.
I mean, that exists like absent of religion. But I mean, if you look at like religion and like healthcare, that's like another like insane topic.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you look at like one end of the spectrum, it's like Christian Scientists. I think they're the ones that like won't take like aspirin when they're feeling bad.
Yeah. They're a little bit on the crazy side.
And then if you go to like Jehovah's Witnesses, they're like iffy about surgery and blood transfusions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in like kind of mainline like Christianity. Like when it comes to like mental health specifically, like there's like a whole spectrum of like views on that stuff.
Right.
So like just regular like preconceptions about what mental health care is, that's like one barrier. And then if you're religious, that could be like another barrier.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it's one of those tough things, man. It's like my take on it is, I don't know, like even like going through like the treatment, it was still like in an act of faith. I wasn't like, oh man, by doing this I'm rejecting like God's treatment.
No,
and
no,
God's
yeah.
salvation. But I mean, that's where like the spectrum of like theology goes when it comes to like healthcare. Like
Yeah.
some people would say like, oh man, he copped out, he's not trusting God.
Yeah.
Right.
That's,
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception too, because I've always talked about this with on the theological level, because I wouldn't necessarily. There's a lot of people out there, friends of ours, even that we've even had on this podcast, who are in the they believe in a lot of the the miracles from like the Book of Acts and stuff, and people are healed and they're freed from whatever they're on their body or their mind or whatever. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I mean that I'm a believer that it does happen. I just don't think that necessarily in the Western world where we have access to the Bible in a fairly regular basis, that I don't think that those things happen quite as frequently. And we also have like I said modern medicine and people who even Christians who are doctors or psychologists, psychiatrists that are helping people like yourself. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when you're going you need, sometimes you need a doctor. It's not a sin, or it's not that you're relying on God. It's God's working through that other person to help you through things.
Yeah. I mean, another thing is like I think my main takeaway like that I'm trying to share with like more people, like whatever like spectrum you're a part of, if you think like you're like not functioning well and it's due to like poor like mental health, like mood disorders, like mental health, or like just like unhealthy habits that like lead to bad mental health, whatever your spectrum or inclination, like talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Like, cause even like that face-to-face meeting where the clinician said like, oh man, you're going through a tough time.
Yeah.
like for me, I was like, okay, I gotta be like honest and just answer all these questions truthfully and see what comes out.
Right.
And the outcome of that was like, some guy said like, oh man, you're going through a tough time, you could probably like benefit from some of this.
Yeah.
So I think no matter what the like spectrum you are, like I'm not saying psychiatry is like an instant answer for like everything, but like some sort of like intervention, I think it's like it can be a conservative thing to say, like if you think you're going through something, talk to somebody about it, get like some sort of perspective on it.
And they might be able to at least point you in the right direction of, hey, you're going through something, this type of person might help you out. Or in your case, like, yeah, it's like, hey, yeah, you need to do a couple of these things that might be worth your while.
Yeah, and like if it ends up not working and you're still not functioning well or feeling well, try to do something else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's like the idea a bricklayer will still call a plumber to fix his toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, and like honestly, like I've been trying to deal with this like myself, and just have not been like making like too much headway in like dealing with stress in like healthy ways.
Right.
And I've tried like years to like figure it out, but over the last like, man, it's almost a year at this point. Within like 10 months, like I've learned so much in this like period of time where I'm able to like deal with things a lot better. Where like the outlook of like kind of like dealing with things like in a healthy way from here on out, it's
Right.
looking better. But like the statistics are against me. Like the stats are like, if you have one depressive episode, the chance of you having a second one, I think is like 50%.
50.
But if you do have that second one, your chance of getting a third is like 90%.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's like propensity or like people not dealing with things, but like I don't know, man. Like the numbers are like I started doing all this like research because like from the time I called to set up like the face-to-face meeting, I had like a span of like a week or so. Like when I wasn't panicked, I would just like do research on like mental health just to
Right.
like prep myself of like what I was getting into. The numbers are shocking. It's like in every year, like 1 in 6 like adults like have some sort of mental health issue, and at any one given time, it's like 5% or something. Like numbers are shocking. Like if
Yeah.
you work
Yeah.
at like a company
Uh-huh.
and just apply like the company you're working at is like a sample size of the population.
Right.
If you work in like a group of like 20 people, there's a chance that like one person's like going through some stuff at that moment. And then there's a chance that like 3 or 4 people within the course of a year will have gone through something. Like those are crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, like I mean just like me, I was probably dealing with stuff for a long time, but I didn't really deal with it until
Right.
things got like terrible.